The morning sun cast long shadows across the busy market square of New Terra Colony. Katie Martinez adjusted her violin under her chin and looked out at the growing crowd. People from all over the galaxy walked through the square, humans in work clothes, tall blue Aldarians with their crystal jewelry, and even some of the rock-like granite folk who rarely left their mountain homes. "Ready, sweetheart?" her father Carlos asked, tuning his guitar. His weathered hands moved quickly across the strings, checking each note with the skill of someone who had played music for 30 years. Katie nodded and smiled. At 12 years old, she had been playing violin for almost as long as she could walk. Her mother Elena sat behind her small keyboard, while her 8-year-old brother Leo held his harmonica ready. They were the Martinez family orchestra, and every morning they brought music to this corner of the galaxy. "What should we start with today?" Elena asked, her fingers dancing over the keys to warm up. "Beauty and the Beast," Katie said without thinking. It was her favorite piece, and somehow it always felt right to play it here on New Terra, where so many different kinds of people lived together. Carlos strummed the opening chords, and Katie lifted her violin. The first notes floated across the square like magic. People stopped walking and turned to listen. A group of human miners, dirty from their morning shift, set down their lunch boxes and gathered around. 3 Aldarian traders, their blue skin shimmering in the sunlight, moved closer with curious expressions. Katie closed her eyes and let the music flow through her. The violin sang the beautiful melody, while her family played the gentle harmony behind her. This was what she loved most, the moment when music took over and everything else disappeared. As she played, more people gathered. A family of settlers, with their children pushed through the crowd to get a better view. Even some of the usually serious Zephyrian businessmen stopped their hurried walking to listen. The Zephyrians were strange creatures made of what looked like living crystal, and they rarely showed interest in anything that wasn't about making money. But today was different. As Katie's violin reached the most beautiful part of the song, the Zephyrians began to glow softly. Their crystal bodies picked up the vibrations of the music and turned them into colored light. Soon they were pulsing with gentle blues and purples. That matched the rhythm of the song. The crowd grew larger. Word was spreading through the market that something special was happening in the Martinez family's corner. Katie opened her eyes and saw faces from dozens of different worlds, all watching her with the same expression. They were all feeling the same thing the music was giving them. An old human woman wiped tears from her eyes. "That's the most beautiful thing I've heard in years," she whispered to her husband. Leo stepped forward with his harmonica and added a playful melody that danced around Katie's violin. Alana's keyboard provided a steady heartbeat of rhythm, while Carlos made his guitar sing along with his daughter's bow. They had played together so many times that they moved like one person with 4 different instruments. As the song reached its end, Katie held the final note long and sweet. The sound seemed to hang in the air for a moment before fading away. The square was completely quiet, except for the distant hum of the colony's machinery. Then the applause started. Humans clapped their hands, Aldarians clicked their tone gems together, and the Zephyrians made a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Even the granite folk, who rarely showed any emotion, nodded their heavy stone heads in approval. People began dropping coins and credits into the family's collection case. But more than that, they were smiling and talking to each other. Katie noticed a human teenager trying to hum the melody to an Aldarian girl, and an old granite folkman was actually laughing at something Leo had said. "Excuse me," a deep voice said from behind the crowd. People turned to see a tall human man in a dark blue uniform. He had short gray hair and kind eyes, but there was something important about the way he carried himself. The crowd parted to let him through. "I'm Captain Ryan Blake," he said, walking up to the family. That was incredible. I've been to hundreds of worlds, and I've never heard anything quite like that. Carlos stood up and shook the captain's hand. Thank you, sir. We're the Martinez family. This is my wife Elena, and our children Katie and Leo. Captain Blake looked at Katie with special interest. Young lady, how long have you been playing? Since I was 4, Katie said, still holding her violin. My dad taught me. And you wrote that arrangement yourselves? We did, Elena said proudly. We take old Earth songs and make them work for our family. Captain Blake nodded slowly. I represent the Earth Colonial Fleet. We're always looking for people who can represent the best of human culture. He paused and looked around at the diverse crowd that was still listening. Tell me, do you always draw audiences like this? Pretty much, Leo said with a grin. Katie's violin does something special to people. Even the aliens like it. Especially the aliens, Carlos added. Music seems to be something everyone understands, no matter where they come from. Captain Blake pulled out a small device and spoke into it quietly. Katie couldn't hear what he said, but she saw him looking at her again. There was something in his expression that made her think he was planning something important. Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, the captain said, putting his device away. How would you feel about taking your music to places where no human music has ever been heard before? Elena and Carlos exchanged a look. What do you mean? Elena asked. I mean the outer rim, the unexplored sectors, places where humans are still just visitors, and where music like yours might be the key to making friends instead of enemies. Katie felt her heart start beating faster. She had always dreamed of seeing the galaxy beyond New Terra, but her parents had always said it was too dangerous for a family with children. It would be an official mission, Captain Blake continued. You'd be cultural ambassadors for Earth. The pay would be good, and you'd have full fleet protection. Carlos looked at his family. What do you think? I want to go, Katie said immediately. I want to play for people who have never heard Earth music before. Me too, Leo added, bouncing on his feet with excitement. Elena was quiet for a moment, then smiled. If it means sharing what we love with new friends, then yes. I think we should do it. Captain Blake smiled. Excellent. Pack your instruments and whatever else you need. We leave for the outer rim tomorrow morning. As the crowd began to break up and people returned to their daily business, Katie looked around the market square one last time. Soon she would be playing her violin among the stars, bringing Earth's music to places where no human had ever been before. She didn't know it yet, but her next performance would change not just her life, but the entire future of human contact with alien civilizations. The spaceship Harmony was bigger than anything Katie had ever seen. Captain Blake led the Martinez family through long metal corridors filled with busy crew members. The ship hummed with power, and through the windows Katie could see stars, moving past them at incredible speed. Your quarters are down this hall, Captain Blake said, stopping at a door marked with their family name. Get settled in, and then meet me in the briefing room in 2 hours. I need to explain exactly where we're going. Katie's room was small but comfortable, with a bed, a desk, and a large window that looked out into space. She unpacked her violin, case carefully, and set it on the desk. Leo burst through the connecting door from his room, his eyes wide with excitement. Katie, look at this, he said, pointing out his window. There's a whole fleet of ships out there. Katie looked where he was pointing and gasped. Dozens of military vessels were flying alongside them, all heading in the same direction. Their lights blinked in patterns against the darkness of space. Why? Do we need so many ships just to play music? She wondered aloud. 2 hours later, the family sat in the briefing room with Captain Blake and several other officers. A large screen showed a map of the galaxy with different colored sections. This is where we are now, Captain Blake said, pointing to a green area. This is human space and our allied territories. But out here, he moved his finger to a gray section at the edge of the map, is something different. The screen changed to show a dark planet surrounded by swirling clouds. It looked mysterious and a little scary. This is Umrose, the home world, of a species called the Ethereals. They've been watching the galaxy for thousands of years, but they've never talked to anyone. Every time someone tries to make contact, their ambassadors either run away in fear or simply disappear. Elena leaned forward. And you want us to try talking to them with music? Not exactly talking, Captain Blake said. 3 weeks ago, we received a message from their leader, someone called the Sovereign. He said he would meet with human representatives, but only if we could prove that humanity has something worthy of their attention. Carlos frowned. What kind of thing? We don't know. Previous attempts by other species have failed completely. The Vorthan Empire sent their greatest warriors. The Ethereals weren't interested. The Galactic Trade Union offered them incredible wealth. They turned it down. The Academic Alliance presented their most advanced scientific discoveries. The Ethereals said it was meaningless. Katie raised her hand like she was in school. What do the Ethereals look like? Captain Blake hesitated. That's complicated. The few reports we had described them as very large and frightening. Some say they look like living shadows. Others say they're like monsters from old Earth stories. But here's the strange part. Their technology's far beyond anything we've ever seen. They could probably conquer the entire galaxy if they wanted to. But they don't want to? Leo asked. That's what we're hoping to find out. And that's why we need you. Every species that's tried to contact them has used the same approach. They've tried to impress the Ethereals with power, wealth, or knowledge. But no one has tried to reach them with art, with emotion, with the things that make us human. The screen showed images of the fleet that would escort them. We'll have protection, but you'll be the ones meeting with the Sovereign. Are you sure you're ready for this? Katie felt scared and excited at the same time. When will we get there? Tomorrow morning. That night, Katie couldn't sleep. She stood at her window, watching the stars and practicing fingering exercises on her violin without making any sound. She kept thinking about what Captain Blake had said. What if the Ethereals really were as scary as everyone said? What if her music wasn't good enough? What if she let everyone down? Leo knocked on her door. Can't sleep either? They sat together on her bed, looking out at the approaching fleet. Do you think we're doing the right thing? Katie asked. Dad always says that music is the best way to make friends, Leo said. Maybe it works with aliens too. The next morning, Katie woke up to find the ship was no longer moving. Outside her window, instead of stars, she saw the dark planet Umrose. It was even more mysterious up close, with purple and blue lights flickering in its clouds. All hands, prepare for departure, came a voice over the ship's speakers. Ambassador Team, report to Shuttle Bay 3. The Martinis family gathered their instruments and met Captain Blake at the shuttle. It was a smaller ship designed to carry them down to the planet's surface. Remember, Captain Blake said as they strapped in, we don't know what to expect down. There, stay together, follow my lead, and if anything seems dangerous, we leave immediately. The shuttle dropped through Umbrose's atmosphere, and Katie pressed her face to the window. The planet was nothing like she had expected. Instead of the dark, scary world she had imagined, she saw incredible beauty. Tall spires twisted up into the sky like frozen music. Gardens of glowing plants stretched as far as she could see. Rivers of light flowed between crystal mountains. It's beautiful, Elena whispered. But where are the people? Carlos asked Dot as if in answer to his question. The shuttle's communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke, but it didn't sound like any human or alien voice Katie had ever heard. It was deep and seemed to echo from everywhere at once. "Human vessel, you are expected. Land at the coordinates we are sending you." The shuttle pilot looked at Captain Blake, who nodded. They flew toward a massive building that looked like it was made of black crystal. As they got closer, Katie could see that the crystal was actually moving, shifting and changing shape, like it was alive. "That's where we're going?" Leo asked, his voice smaller than usual. "That's where we're going," Captain Blake confirmed. They landed on a platform that appeared to be made of the same living crystal as the building. As they stepped out of the shuttle, Katie felt a strange tingling in the air, like the moment before a thunderstorm. "Welcome, humans," the echoing voice said, but Katie couldn't see who was speaking. "The Sovereign will see you now." Doorways opened in the crystal walls, leading into corridors that glowed with soft light. Katie clutched her violin case tighter and followed her family into the building. The corridors were filled with the most beautiful music Katie had ever heard, but it wasn't coming from any instruments she could see. The walls themselves seemed to be singing, creating harmonies that made her heart race and her eyes water. "This way," the voice said, and Katie realized that the voice was coming from the building itself. They walked for what felt like hours, though Katie's watch said it was only 10 minutes. Finally, they came to a huge chamber with a ceiling so high she couldn't see the top. In the center of the room was a raised platform, and on that platform was a throne. And on the throne sat something that made Katie's breath catch in her throat. The Sovereign was huge, easily 3 times the size of a human. His form seemed to shift between solid and shadow, and his face was hidden behind what looked like a mask made of starlight. When he spoke, his voice filled the entire chamber. "So, humans, you have come to prove your worth. Many have tried. All have failed. What makes you think you will be different?" Katie stared up at the Sovereign, her heart beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. The massive figure on the throne seemed to be made of darkness and starlight, shifting and changing like smoke. His voice filled the crystal chamber when he spoke, making the walls vibrate. "Many species have come before you," the Sovereign continued, his voice like distant thunder. "The Vorthen brought their finest weapons, thinking we would be impressed by their power to destroy. The Trade Union offered us riches beyond counting, believing we desired wealth. The Academic Alliance presented their greatest discoveries, assuming we sought knowledge above all else. Captain Blake stepped forward, and what happened to them?" The Sovereign's form rippled, and Katie thought she saw something like sadness in the movement. "They left. Some ran in fear when they saw us. Others simply realized they had nothing we wanted and departed quietly. A few." The Sovereign paused. "A few stayed to study us, but they found only emptiness." "Emptiness?" Helena asked softly. "You will understand soon enough," the Sovereign said. "But first, you must prove that humanity deserves our attention. We do not judge worthiness by strength or wealth or intelligence. We have seen enough of those things. What we seek is something else entirely." Carlos cleared his throat. "What exactly are you looking for?" The Sovereign leaned forward on his throne, and Katie could feel the weight of his attention like a physical thing. "We seek that which we have lost. That which makes existence more than mere survival. That which transforms breathing into living." Katie didn't fully understand what he meant, but something in his voice made her feel sad. She looked at her family, then at Captain Blake. Everyone seemed confused except for her. Somehow, she thought she knew what the Sovereign was talking about. "You want to feel something," she said quietly. The chamber became completely silent. The Sovereign turned his attention to Katie, and she felt like she was standing in front of a mountain that was looking back at her. "The child understands," the Sovereign said, and his voice was different now, softer but somehow more frightening. "Yes, young human. We seek that which your species possesses in abundance, but which we have forgotten entirely. I don't understand, Captain Blake said. The sovereign rose from his throne, and Katie gasped. He was even bigger standing up, easily 15 feet tall. As he moved, she could see that he wasn't just one creature, but seemed to be made of many shadow-like parts that flowed together. Millennia ago, my people achieved perfect efficiency, the sovereign explained, walking down from his platform. With each step, the crystal floor rang like a bell. We eliminated waste, removed chaos, perfected our society. We became the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. He stopped in front of the Martinez family, towering over them. But in our quest for perfection, we lost something essential. We can no longer feel joy or sorrow, hope or fear, love or anger. We exist, but we do not live. We are powerful, but we are empty. Katie felt tears starting in her eyes. That's so. Sadness, the sovereign repeated, and his voice carried a strange longing. Yes, that is one of the things we cannot feel. We remember what it was like, but we cannot experience it anymore. Leo stepped closer to Katie, clutching his harmonica. So you want us to help you feel things again? If such a thing is possible, the sovereign said. We have brought you here because humans are known throughout the galaxy for your emotional nature. Other species find you chaotic, unpredictable, driven by feelings rather than logic. But we we envy you that chaos. Elena set up her keyboard without being asked. What would you like us to play? The sovereign tilted his head, and Katie could almost see confusion in his posture. We do not know. We have forgotten what music is for. We remember the sounds, but not the purpose. Carlos tuned his guitar and looked at his family. Katie, what do you think? Katie thought about everything the sovereign had said. These beings were powerful and advanced, but they had lost the ability to feel. They were like the beast in the old story, trapped in a form that kept them from being who they really were. Beauty. And the beast, she said, lifting her violin. The same song we played in the market. Are you sure? Captain Blake asked. Maybe something more impressive? Katie shook her head. This is the right song. Trust me. She positioned her violin under her chin and looked at her family. Carlos nodded and began the gentle opening chords. Elena's keyboard added a soft melody, and Leo waited for his moment to join in. Katie closed her eyes and began to play. The first notes of Beauty and the Beast floated through the crystal chamber, sweet and clear. But something was different this time. The chamber itself seemed to respond to the music, the walls beginning to glow brighter with each note as Katie played the main melody. She opened her eyes and looked at the sovereign. The massive being stood perfectly still, but something was changing. The shadows that made up his form were moving differently, flowing and swirling instead of simply shifting. The music built as her family joined in. Leo's harmonica added playful notes that danced around Katie's violin, while Carlos and Elena provided the foundation that held it all together. They had played this song hundreds of times, but never like this. Never with such purpose. As the melody reached its most beautiful section, something incredible happened. The sovereign's form began to solidify, becoming less shadow and more real. Katie could see features emerging from the darkness, not the monster she had expected, but something almost human, though much larger and more graceful. What is happening to me? The sovereign asked, his voice filled with wonder. Other figures began to emerge from the walls of the chamber. Katie realized that more ethereals had been watching from hiding, their forms blending with the crystal walls. As her music continued, they too became more solid, more real. One of them, smaller than the sovereign, but still twice as tall as a human, stepped forward. When she spoke, her voice was like wind chimes. I remember this feeling, she said, and Katie could hear amazement in her words. It is called wonder. Another ethereal, this one glowing with soft blue light, touched his chest where a human heart would be. And this sensation here, this warmth, what is it called? Happiness, Elena said softly, still playing her keyboard. That's happiness you're feeling. The sovereign knelt down so he was closer to Katie's level. His face was becoming clearer now, and she could see that he wasn't frightening at all. He was beautiful in a strange, otherworldly way. Play more, he said, and for the first time his voice sounded like it came from someone who was truly alive. Please, play more. Katie smiled and continued the song, but now she understood something important. The ethereals weren't beasts at all. They were just people who had forgotten how to be people. And somehow, her music was helping them remember. As the song reached its end, Katie held the final note long and sweet. When it faded away, the chamber was filled with a different kind of silence than before. It was the silence of people who had just discovered something wonderful. The sovereign stood up, and Katie could see that his transformation was complete. He still looked like an ethereal, but now he looked alive. Thank you, he said, and Katie was surprised to see what looked like tears glowing on his face. We had forgotten what it meant to feel. Your music has given us back ourselves. The sovereign wiped the glowing tears from his face and stared at his wet fingers in amazement. I had forgotten that sadness could be beautiful, he said quietly. I had forgotten that tears could come from joy as well as pain. Katie lowered her violin and looked around the chamber. More ethereals were appearing from the walls, their forms becoming solid and real. Some were tall and graceful like the sovereign. Others were smaller and moved like dancers. All of them were staring at the Martinez family with expressions of wonder. How many of you are there? Elena asked, still sitting at her keyboard. Millions, the sovereign replied. Our entire civilization lives on this world and others like it. But we have all been trapped in the same emptiness for so long that we barely remember what it was like to be alive. A young ethereal, no bigger than Katie herself, stepped forward shyly. Her form flickered between shadow and light, but Katie could see that she was trying to become solid like the others. Could you teach me to make sounds like that? The young ethereal asked, pointing at Katie's violin. Katie smiled. Of course. What's your name? I am called Lyra, the young ethereal said, her voice like soft music. I think I remember wanting to create beautiful sounds, but I cannot recall how. Carlos stood up and walked over to them. Music isn't just about making sounds, he said. Gently. It's about expressing what you feel inside. The sounds are just the way we share those feelings with others. But what if we have no feelings to share? Asked another ethereal, this one with skin that looked like polished silver. Everyone has feelings, Leo said, spinning his harmonica between his fingers. Sometimes they just get buried under other things, but they're always there. The sovereign nodded slowly. The child speaks wisdom. Perhaps our feelings are not gone, but simply hidden. He looked at Katie. Your music has awakened something in us that we thought was lost forever. But I must tell you the truth about what happened to my people. The chamber grew quiet as the sovereign walked to the center of the room. With a gesture, the walls began to change, showing images like a giant movie screen. Long ago, we were much like you, he began. We laughed, we cried, we created art and music. We loved and we mourned. But we also fought wars, made mistakes, and suffered greatly. The images showed ancient ethereals who looked almost human, living in beautiful cities and creating wonderful works of art. But then the images changed, showing conflict and destruction. Our emotions led us to great heights, but also to terrible depths, the sovereign continued. We decided that feelings were the source of all our problems. So we used our advanced technology to remove them from ourselves. Katie gasped. You chose to stop feeling? We thought it would make us perfect, the sovereign said sadly. No more wars, no more suffering, no more mistakes. We would be logical, efficient, and peaceful. But you also lost all the good feelings too, Helena said. Yes, we lost joy, wonder, love, and hope. We became exactly what we wished to be, perfect, and empty. For 1,000 years, we have existed without truly living. The images changed again, showing the ethereals as they were now, powerful but hollow, advanced but lifeless. Cities that should have been full of laughter were silent. Gardens that should have been places of beauty were simply efficient food production facilities. That's the saddest story I've ever heard, Katie said, tears running down her face. Do not weep for us, the sovereign said, but his voice was gentle. Your tears are precious, but they should not be wasted on our mistakes. But there's hope now, right? Leo asked. I mean, you're feeling things again because of our music. The sovereign paused, and Katie could see uncertainty in his expression. I do not know. The effects of your music seem to be temporary. Already? Some of the ethereals, who are furthest from your performance, are beginning to fade back into shadow. Katie looked around and saw that he was right. Some of the ethereals at the edges of the chamber were becoming less solid, their forms flickering, like candles in the wind. What if we played for all of them? Katie asked. What if we went to every city and every place where your people live? That would take years, Captain Blake said. And we don't know if the effect would last. The sovereign shook his head. There is another problem. Not all of my people want to feel again. Many believe that our emotions made us weak and that we should remain as we are. As if summoned by his words, the chamber's walls suddenly rang with a harsh metallic sound. New figures appeared, but these ones were different. They were larger and more angular than the other ethereals, and they moved with military precision. Sovereign, one of them said in a voice like grinding metal, you have allowed these aliens to contaminate our people with their chaos. This must stop. The sovereign's form solidified completely, and Katie could see strength and determination in his posture. Commander Vexthul, these humans have given us a gift. They have shown us what we lost. They have shown us weakness, Vexthul replied. Look at you, reduced to weeping like a primitive creature. Look at our people, their perfect forms corrupted by emotion. Katie stepped forward, clutching her violin. Feeling things doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong enough to care about others. Vexthul turned his attention to her, and Katie felt a chill run through her body. Unlike the sovereign, this ethereal had not been changed by the music. He was still all shadow and emptiness. You are a child, Vexthul said dismissively. You understand nothing of the price of emotion. You do not know the wars it causes, the pain it brings, the chaos it creates. I know it also brings love, Katie replied, not backing down, and hope, and the reason to keep trying, even when things are hard. Meaningless words, Vexthul said. Sovereign, I command you to send these aliens away and return our people to their proper state. You do not command me, the sovereign said, his voice growing stronger. I am still the leader of our people, and I say that these humans will stay as long as they wish. Then you are no longer fit to lead, Vexthul replied. The military council has decided. If you will not remove this emotional contamination from our people, we will do it ourselves. More military ethereals appeared around the chamber, surrounding Katie and her family. Captain Blake reached for his weapon, but the sovereign held up a hand to stop him. You would use force against your own people? The sovereign asked. We would use force to protect our people from returning to the chaos of emotion, Vexthul said. We have seen what feelings do to a civilization. We will not allow our species to fall back into that trap. Katie looked around at the ethereals who had been transformed by the music. They were becoming more solid, more real, as if the sovereigns Determination was giving them strength. But she could also see fear in their faces, fear that they might lose their newly rediscovered feelings. "There has to be another way," she said. "There has to be a way to show them that emotions aren't something to be afraid of." Lyra, a young ethereal, stepped forward to stand beside Katie. "I want to keep feeling," she said in her musical voice. "For the first time in my life, I know what it means to be happy. I will not let anyone take that away." Other ethereals began to join her, forming a circle around the Martinez family. They were choosing sides, Katie realized. Some wanted to keep their emotions, while others wanted to remain empty but safe. "You see?" Vexthul said to the sovereign. "Already the contamination spreads. Already divides our people. This is exactly what emotions do. They create conflict where there was once peace." "No," Katie said firmly. "That's not what emotions do. That's what fear does. You're afraid of feeling, so you're trying to make everyone else afraid too." Vexthul's form grew larger and more threatening. "Silence, child. You have done enough damage." But Katie raised her violin instead of stepping back. "I'm not done yet. I'm going to show you what emotions really do. I'm going to show you what it means to be alive." The chamber filled with tension as two sides faced each other, those who wanted to feel and those who wanted to remain empty. Katie knew that what happened next would determine the future of an entire civilization. She looked at her family, and they nodded. They were ready to play again, ready to fight for the right of all beings to feel joy and love and hope. Battle was about to begin. Katie lifted her violin, and the chamber grew quiet. Even the military ethereals stopped moving, waiting to see what would happen next. She could feel the tension in the air, like electricity before a storm. "Play with me," she whispered to her. "Family, not just music this time. Play with all the love we have." Carlos strummed his guitar softly, and Elena began a gentle melody on her keyboard. Leo held his harmonica ready, watching his sister's face for the right moment to join in. Katie closed her eyes and began to play. But this time, she didn't just play the notes of Beauty and the Beast. She played every happy memory she had. Christmas mornings with her family, the first time she made her violin sing perfectly, the look on people's faces when her music touched their hearts. The music filled the chamber, but it was different from before. It carried not just sound, but emotion itself. Katie could feel her love for her family flowing through the notes, her hope for the future, her joy in sharing music with others. The ethereals who had been changed by the first performance began to glow brighter. Lyra, the young ethereal, started to move her body in rhythm with the music, swaying like a dancer. Other ethereals joined her, their forms becoming more solid and real with each note. "Stop this at once," Vexthul commanded, but his voice sounded less certain than before. The sovereign stepped forward, his form now completely solid and radiating a warm, golden light. "Listen to the music, old friend. Really listen. Remember what we used to be." "I remember chaos," Vexthul replied, but Katie noticed that his voice had changed slightly. "I remember pain." "Yes," the sovereign said gently. "But do you remember what came with the pain? Do you remember the joy that made the pain worthwhile?" Katie opened her eyes and saw something amazing happening. The walls of the chamber had become transparent, and she could see out into the city beyond. Ethereals were emerging from buildings, drawn by the music. Thousands of them, all moving toward the Crystal Palace. "The music is spreading," Elena said in wonder, still playing her keyboard. "It's reaching the whole city." Leo stepped forward and added his harmonica to the melody. The playful, dancing notes seemed to give the other ethereals permission to move, to express themselves. Soon the chamber was filled with ethereals who were learning to feel again. But the military ethereals were not happy about this. Vexthol raised his hand, and Katie saw energy crackling between his fingers. "Enough," he said. "If you will not stop this contamination willingly, I will stop it by force." "No," Lyra said, stepping in front of Katie. "I will not let you hurt them." Other ethereals moved to join her, forming a protective circle around the Martinez family. They were choosing to defend the humans who had given them back their emotions. "You see?" Vexthol said to the sovereign. "Already the emotions create conflict. Already they turn our people against each other. They're not fighting because of emotions," Katie said, still playing her violin. "They're fighting to protect emotions. They're fighting for the right to feel." "It is the same thing," Vexthol replied. "Emotion leads to conflict. Conflict leads to war. War leads to destruction." "You're wrong," Carlos said, his guitar providing a steady rhythm for Katie's melody. "Emotion leads to connection. Connection leads to understanding. Understanding leads to peace." "Pretty words," Vexthol said, "but I have seen the reality. I have lived through the wars that emotion caused among our people." The sovereign moved closer to his military commander. "You have lived through the wars, yes, but you have forgotten what we were fighting for. We fought for love, for hope, for the chance to build something beautiful. The fighting was terrible, but the reasons we fought were good. The reasons do not matter when the results are death and destruction," Vexthol replied. Katie stopped playing for a moment, and the chamber fell silent. She looked directly at Vexthol and saw something in his shadowy form that reminded her of herself when she was scared. "You're afraid," she said softly. "You're not angry about the emotions. You're afraid of them." "I am not afraid," Vexthol said, but his voice was less certain than before. "Yes, you are," Katie said gently, "and that's okay. Fear is an emotion. Too, it's trying to protect you from getting hurt." She began to play again, but this time her music was different. It was softer, more careful, like a lullaby. She played the feeling of being safe, of being protected, of being loved even when. "You're scared." "I remember," one of the military ethereals said suddenly. "I remember being afraid during the wars, but I also remember. I remember my mate holding me afterward, telling me everything would be all right." His form began to change, becoming less rigid and more fluid. Other military ethereals looked at him in shock. "Do not listen to the contamination," Vexthol ordered. "Remember your training. Remember your duty." "My duty," the ethereal said slowly, "was to protect our people. But how can I protect them if I cannot understand what makes life worth protecting?" More military ethereals began to change. Katie's music was reaching them, helping them remember what they had lost. Their rigid forms softened. Their metallic voices became more musical. "No," Vexthol said, backing away. "This cannot be happening. We were perfect. We were efficient. We were safe. We were empty," the sovereign said sadly. "We were surviving, but we are not living." Katie played louder, her violin singing with all the emotion she could pour into it, and music spread beyond the chamber, beyond the city, reaching every corner of the planet. She could feel the response, millions of ethereals beginning to remember what it meant to be alive. "Look outside," Elena said, nodding toward the transparent walls. Katie looked and gasped. The entire city was glowing. Ethereals were emerging. From every building, their forms solid and real. They were dancing, singing, laughing, crying, experiencing the full range of emotions for the first time in 1,000 years. "It's working," Leo said, his harmonica adding joyful notes to the melody. "They're all waking up." But Vexthol was not giving up. "If I cannot stop this contamination," he said, raising both hands, "then I will destroy its source." Energy began to build around him, crackling and dangerous. Katie could feel the power he was gathering, enough to destroy the entire chamber and everyone in it. "Commander, no," the sovereign said, moving toward him. "These humans have done nothing wrong. They have only shared their gift with us." "Their gift is a curse," Vexthul replied, "and I will end it now." Katie kept playing, even as the energy around Vexthul grew brighter and more dangerous. She could feel that this was the most important moment of her life. Everything depended on what happened next. "I'm not afraid of you," she said, looking directly at the military commander, "because I know what you really are." "What am I?" Vexthul asked, his voice filled with rage and power. "You're someone who cares so much about his people that he would do anything to protect them," Katie replied. "Even if it means becoming something he hates. Even if it means being alone." The energy around Vexthul flickered. For just a moment, Katie saw something different in his form. Not emptiness, but pain. Deep, terrible pain that had been hidden for so long that he had forgotten it was there. "You miss them," Katie said softly. "You miss the people you lost in the wars. You miss feeling connected to others. You miss being able to love." "Stop," Vexthul whispered, but the energy around him was fading. "It's okay to miss them," Katie said, her music becoming gentle and healing. "It's okay to be sad. It's okay to hurt. That's what makes the love real." Vexthul's form began to change. The rigid lines softened, the metallic texture became more organic. And for the first time in 1,000 years, Commander Vexthul of the ethereal military began to cry. "I remember," he said, his voice breaking. "I remember her face. I remember how much it hurt when she died. I remember why I wanted to stop feeling. But you also remember why the feeling was worth it," the sovereign said gently, moving to stand beside his old friend. "Yes," Vexthul said, his transformation complete. "I remember that too." Katie lowered her violin as the chamber filled with transformed ethereals, military and civilian, young and old, all of them learning to feel again. The music had done what weapons and logic could not. It had reminded an entire species what it meant to be alive. 3 months had passed since the day Katie Martinez played her violin in a crystal chamber. The planet Umbros looked completely different now. Where once there had been silent, efficient cities, now there were places filled with laughter and music. Ethereal children played in gardens that bloomed with colors that had been forgotten for 1,000 years. Katie stood on a balcony in the Crystal Palace, looking out over the transformed world. Her violin case sat beside her, worn from constant use. She had been teaching music to ethereals of all ages, and they had been teaching her their own forgotten arts in return. "The morning concert starts in an hour," Lyra said, appearing beside her. The young ethereal had become Katie's closest friend and best student. She now carried her own violin, crafted from ethereal crystal, that sang with a voice like pure starlight. "I know," Katie said, smiling. "Are you nervous?" "A little," Lyra admitted. "But it's a good kind of nervous. The kind that means something. Important is happening. Today was special. Representatives from every world in the galaxy were coming to Umbros for the first ever Galactic Festival of Unity. The Sovereign had invited everyone to celebrate the transformation of his people and to share in the joy of rediscovered emotions. "Katie," Leo called from inside the palace. "Mom says it's time to get ready." Katie picked up her violin case and followed Lyra inside. The palace had changed too. Where once there had been cold efficiency, now there were warm rooms filled with art and music. Ethereal craftsmen worked alongside human artists, creating beautiful things that no one had ever imagined before. In the main chamber, her family was setting up their instruments, alongside dozens of ethereal musicians. The Sovereign stood near, the center, no longer the frightening figure he had once been. He now looked like what he truly was, a wise and caring leader who loved his people. Are we ready for this? Carlos asked, tuning his guitar. More than ready, Helena replied, adjusting her keyboard. This is what we were meant to do. Captain Blake approached them, wearing his dress uniform. The first ships are arriving now, he said. Delegates from the Aldarian Empire, the Zephyrian Trade Federation, even the Granite Folk Collective. Everyone wants to see what happened here. Through the transparent walls, Katie could see spacecraft landing on platforms around the city. Beings from dozens of different worlds were coming to witness something that had never happened before. A species that had voluntarily chosen to give up perfection in order to rediscover joy. What if they don't understand? Lyra asked, clutching her crystal violin. What if they think we were better before? Then we'll show them why feelings matter, Katie said. We'll show them what makes life beautiful. The sovereign raised his hand, and the chamber grew quiet. My friends, he said, his voice carrying easily through the crystal halls. Today we celebrate not just the transformation of the ethereal people, but the power of connection between all living beings. We have learned that no species is an island, and that sometimes the greatest gifts come from the most unexpected places. He gestured toward the Martinez family. These humans came here with nothing but their music and their love for each other. They asked for nothing in return, yet they gave us back ourselves. The chamber filled with warm light as hundreds of ethereals showed their agreement. Katie had learned that this was how her new friends expressed applause, not with sound, but with the gentle glow of happiness. But today is not just about us, the sovereign continued. Today we begin something new. Today we start building a galaxy where every species can share what makes them special, where differences are celebrated instead of feared. The delegates from other worlds began to enter the chamber. Katie recognized some of them. Tall blue Aldarians, crystalline Zephyrians, massive stone like granite folk, but there were others she had never seen before, beings with features that seemed impossible but beautiful. Welcome, friends, the sovereign said to the gathering crowd. You have come to see what the humans call a miracle, but I tell you that what happened here was not magic. It was simply the result of one species caring enough about another to share their greatest treasure. Vex Thul, now transformed and serving as the sovereign's advisor, stepped forward. We invite you to experience for yourselves the gift that humanity brought to us. We invite you to feel. Katie lifted her violin and looked at her family. They nodded, ready to play for the largest and most diverse audience they had ever faced. She began with a single pure note that filled the chamber with its clarity. Then Carlos joined in with his guitar, followed by Elena's keyboard and Leo's harmonica. But this time, they were not alone. Lyra added her crystal violin, and other ethereal musicians joined with instruments that sang and chimed and whispered. The music they created was unlike anything the galaxy had ever heard. It combined the emotional depth of human music with the ethereal beauty of ethereal artistry. It spoke of joy and sorrow, hope and fear, love and loss, all the things that made life worth living. As the music filled the chamber, something wonderful happened. The delegates from other worlds began to respond. The usually serious Aldarian ambassadors started to sway with the rhythm. The Zephyrian traders glowed with colors that matched the melody. Even the stoic granite folk began to hum along in their deep, rumbling voices. Katie saw tears on faces that had never cried before, smiles on beings who had forgotten how to express joy. The music was doing what it did best, connecting everyone who heard it to the feelings that made them alive. A small creature that looked like a walking flower raised a voice like birdsong. This is what we have been missing, she said. This connection, this sharing of what lives inside us all. We have been so busy competing with each other, said a delegate who seemed to be made of living metal, that we forgot we could create together instead. The music built to its climax, with every being in the chamber contributing their own voice, or instrument or unique sound. It became a symphony of the galaxy itself, with each species adding their own special note to the greater harmony. When the music finally ended, the chamber was filled with a silence that was full rather than empty. It was the silence of beings who had discovered something precious together. The sovereign stood up, his form radiating warmth and joy. "This is our gift to the galaxy," he said. "Not our technology, not our knowledge, but our rediscovered ability to feel and share and connect. We offer this to all who would join us in building a future where every species can be both strong and caring, both advanced and alive." One by one the delegates stood up. The Aldarian ambassador spoke first. "The Aldarian Empire accepts this gift and offers our own in return. We will share our knowledge of growing things so that every world can bloom with beauty." The Zephyrian representative glowed bright blue. "The Trade Federation offers our networks of communication so that music and art can travel instantly between all worlds." The granite folk delegate's voice rumbled like a mountain. "We offer our strength and our permanence so that what we build together will last forever." Other delegates spoke, each offering their species' greatest gifts to be shared with all. Katie realized she was witnessing the birth of something completely new, not just an alliance of worlds, but a true community of different peoples choosing to care about each other. Months later, Katie stood on the stage of a concert hall that spanned 3 star systems, connected by ethereal technology and Zephyrian communication networks. Human musicians played alongside ethereals, Aldarians, Zephyrians, and dozens of other species. The music they created together was more beautiful than anything any single species could have made alone. "Do you ever miss the simple days?" Leo asked, his harmonica glinting in the multicolored starlight that served as stage lighting. Katie smiled as she raised her violin. "Every day was simple," she said. "We just didn't know we were changing the galaxy." As the cosmic orchestra began to play, Katie thought about how strange life could be. A year ago, she had been a street musician trying to make people smile in a market square. Now she was part of something that connected billions of beings across thousands of worlds. But in the end, it was the same thing she had always been doing. She was sharing the music that lived in her heart, hoping it would touch the hearts of those who heard it. Whether her audience was a dozen people in a market or a billion beings across the stars, the music remained the same. It was the music of connection, of understanding, of love. It was the music that reminded everyone who heard it that no matter how different they might look on the outside, inside they all shared the same capacity for beauty. And as Katie played her violin among the stars, she knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was full of species who had never heard music like this, full of beings who had forgotten how to feel, full of people who needed to remember that they were not alone. The Martinez family had work to do.